Everybody keeps saying the WNBA is growing bigger than ever right now. But what if the version of the league fans are seeing online isn't the full reality anymore? Because behind all the viral clips, nonstop headlines, and carefully controlled storylines, a completely different conversation is starting to explode across the internet. And honestly, the league may have created a narrative fans are slowly starting to reject. Think about it. Certain players dominate every discussion, no matter what happens on the court. Every reaction trends. Every quote becomes a headline. Every highlight floods social media within minutes. Meanwhile, other stars are putting together elite performances, and somehow the attention just disappears. And fans are noticing it more after every single game. Now people are asking questions nobody was asking a few months ago. Is the league naturally growing around certain superstars? Or is the audience being pushed toward a version of the WNBA that feels manufactured? Because once fans begin noticing patterns in media coverage, broadcasts, and social media attention, it becomes impossible to unsee. And here's where things get wild. The divide inside the fanbase is getting ugly. Some viewers think this is exactly how modern sports work. Others believe women's basketball is slowly turning into a media-controlled narrative war where perception matters more than performance itself. And the craziest part? The louder this debate gets, the harder it becomes for the league to control the conversation anymore. And the more fans dig into the situation, the stranger the entire thing starts to look. Because now people are no longer arguing about who the best player is. They're arguing about whether the audience is even seeing the real version of the WNBA anymore. And that's where the story takes a darker turn. Because behind all the viral moments and emotional debates, fans have started noticing something that feels way too consistent to be random. The same reactions get pushed everywhere. The same narratives dominate headlines for days. The same players become the center of attention no matter what actually happens during games. And meanwhile, other performances disappear almost instantly. Not because they were bad. Not because they didn't matter. But because the internet never decided to care about them in the first place. That realization is making fans uncomfortable. Because once people begin feeling like attention is being controlled instead of earned naturally, trust starts collapsing fast. Suddenly, every highlight feels calculated. Every media segment feels selective. Every debate online starts sounding less like basketball discussion and more like audience manipulation. And honestly, this is where things start becoming dangerous for the league itself. Because the WNBA isn't just fighting for ratings anymore. It's fighting for credibility with its own audience. You can already see the shift happening across social media. Fans are replaying clips side by side, comparing coverage. They're questioning why certain moments trend instantly while others barely exist online hours later. They're noticing how one emotional reaction can dominate the sports world while an elite performance quietly disappears into the background. And once viewers start seeing those patterns repeatedly, they stop watching the league the same way. That's the real issue here. The conversation is no longer about basketball alone. It's about perception, influence, visibility, and who controls the narrative after the final buzzer sounds. Because in today's sports world, what happens after the game can matter even more than the game itself. And that reality is changing how fans connect with players completely. Some viewers now believe certain stars are becoming larger than the sport itself, not necessarily because of performance, but because media attention keeps reinforcing their importance over and over again. Meanwhile, other athletes are forced into the background no matter how consistently they play. And whether fans admit it or not, resentment starts building when people feel greatness is being ignored. That resentment is what's fueling the divide exploding across the WNBA community right now. Some fans are defending the league aggressively, saying this is simply how modern sports work. They believe star power drives growth, attention drives money, and viral personalities are necessary if women's basketball wants to keep expanding globally. But critics think that argument misses the bigger problem completely. Because according to them, the league isn't just promoting stars anymore, it's creating an artificial version of reality where only selected storylines survive long enough to dominate public opinion. And once that happens, performance stops being the only thing shaping reputations. Narratives do. That's why every game now feels politically charged online. Every highlight turns into an argument. Every post-game discussion becomes a battlefield between fans defending completely different versions of what they think they watched. And the craziest part? Both sides genuinely believe they're protecting the future of women's basketball. One side thinks the league needs stars, drama, and nonstop media attention to keep growing. The other side thinks the obsession with narratives is slowly distorting the sport itself. And somewhere in the middle of all this chaos, the actual basketball keeps getting pulled deeper into the background. That's the twist nobody expected, because the WNBA finally achieved the attention it spent years fighting for. But now fans are starting to question whether that attention is creating a version of the league that no longer feels fully authentic. And if that feeling keeps growing louder after every game, every viral clip, and every controversy, then this debate is only going to get uglier from here. And the deeper this conversation goes, the more impossible it becomes for the league to escape it. Because now fans aren't just reacting emotionally anymore, they're documenting everything. Every clip, every broadcast decision, every viral headline, every moment that feels amplified compared to everything else happening around it. And when people begin collecting evidence instead of just opinions, that's when narratives become difficult to control. You can feel the atmosphere changing around the WNBA in real time. Games that used to be discussed purely for basketball reasons are now turning into online investigations. Fans are watching broadcasts differently. They're paying attention to who gets camera focus during timeouts, who gets replay packages after big moments, whose reactions are instantly posted across social media accounts within seconds. And once that level of scrutiny begins, every small detail suddenly matters. Because people aren't only asking who played the best anymore. They're asking who the audience is being told matters the most. That question is spreading everywhere right now. And honestly, some fans believe the answer is becoming painfully obvious. They think the league has accidentally created a system where visibility itself has become more powerful than actual consistency on the court, where a player's media value can completely reshape how performances are remembered online. And if that sounds dramatic, look at how fast public perception changes after one viral moment. A single clip can suddenly make a player untouchable online for an entire week. Meanwhile, another athlete can quietly dominate an actual game and barely receive national attention outside hardcore fans. That imbalance is exactly what keeps reigniting the tension after almost every major matchup. Because the internet notices everything now. Fans compare stat lines instantly. They compare coverage instantly. They compare social media reactions instantly. And when those things stop matching each other naturally, people begin assuming there's a bigger machine operating behind the scenes. That's why some viewers have started describing the current WNBA environment as manufactured. Not fake in the sense that games are scripted, but curated, carefully shaped, carefully promoted, carefully pushed toward whichever narratives create the strongest emotional reactions online. And honestly, whether that's true or not almost doesn't matter anymore. Because perception itself is becoming reality. That's the dangerous point the league may already be approaching. Once enough fans start believing the conversation around the sport feels manipulated, every future moment gets filtered through suspicion automatically. Every headline gets questioned. Every viral debate feels strategic instead of organic. And now the players themselves are getting caught inside that chaos. Because some athletes are being turned into symbols for arguments they never even asked to represent. One player becomes the face of media favoritism. Another becomes the ignored superstar. Another becomes the villain in endless online wars between fan bases. And suddenly the actual athletes stop feeling like people to the internet. They become narratives. That's why emotions inside the WNBA community feel more explosive than ever right now. Fans aren't just defending basketball opinions anymore. They're defending identities, loyalties, and versions of reality they fully believe are true. And social media is making everything worse. Because outrage spreads faster than context every single time. A clipped reaction trends faster than full game analysis. An emotional quote spreads faster than balanced discussion. Controversy generates more engagement than nuance ever will. And the internet knows it. That's why every week feels louder than the last one. Every debate becomes more aggressive. Every fan base becomes more defensive. Every controversial moment creates another flood of accusations about media bias, favoritism, selective promotion, and hidden agendas shaping the future of women's basketball. And through all of this noise, something strange is happening to the league's image itself. The WNBA is becoming simultaneously bigger and more divided at the exact same time. That's the contradiction nobody can ignore anymore. Because while ratings rise and attention grows, trust inside portions of the fanbase seems to be weakening simultaneously. Some viewers feel more emotionally invested than ever before. Others feel increasingly disconnected from the version of the sport being presented online. And if those two realities continue colliding every single week, then eventually the league may face a much bigger problem than criticism. It may face a fanbase that no longer agrees on what the WNBA actually is anymore. And honestly, this may be the exact moment where the WNBA loses control of the narrative completely. Because what started as normal fan debates has now evolved into something far more chaotic, a full-scale battle over what the league is becoming in front of the entire sports world. And the craziest part? The players themselves are no longer the only focus anymore. Now the spotlight is turning toward the system surrounding them. Fans are beginning to question the entire ecosystem behind the league's media culture. Who decides which clips trend first? Who gets pushed onto every major sports page? Why do certain storylines survive for weeks while others disappear within hours no matter how impressive the performance was? These questions are spreading fast. And once audiences start asking those kinds of questions publicly, trust becomes extremely difficult to rebuild. Because people don't just want highlights anymore. They want authenticity. They want to believe the excitement they're seeing online reflects what's actually happening on the court naturally, not what algorithms, media outlets, and viral culture decide should matter most. But right now, a growing number of fans believe those two things are drifting further apart every single week. That's why emotions feel so intense around the league lately. Because this no longer feels like ordinary sports drama. It feels personal. Fans are emotionally attaching themselves to players they believe are overlooked. They're defending athletes they think are being unfairly criticized. And at the same time, they're becoming suspicious of every narrative that suddenly explodes across the internet overnight. And social media keeps pouring gasoline on the fire. Because once outrage enters the cycle, the internet stops rewarding balance. It rewards conflict. That's why controversial clips spread faster than actual basketball analysis. It's why emotional reactions dominate timelines longer than complete performances. And it's why fanbases now spend more time fighting each other online than discussing the games themselves. And honestly, that shift may already be changing the identity of the WNBA permanently. Because attention has become the center of everything. Not just talent, not just winning. Attention. And once attention becomes the most valuable currency in sports, narratives start overpowering reality faster than people realize. That's exactly what some fans believe is happening right now. They think the league has entered a dangerous phase where certain players are no longer simply athletes. They've become media products carrying entire storylines on their backs. Meanwhile, other stars are left fighting for visibility no matter how dominant they perform. And every time fans witness another uneven reaction online, their frustration grows even stronger. Because people can tolerate favoritism once. They can tolerate media hype once. But when the same patterns appear repeatedly, audiences start feeling manipulated instead of entertained. That's the real problem quietly growing underneath all this attention. The audience is becoming more aware. And awareness changes everything. Because once fans begin recognizing how narratives are built, they stop consuming sports passively. They start analyzing motives behind coverage. They start questioning why certain moments are elevated while others vanish instantly. And eventually they stop trusting the emotional reactions surrounding the league entirely. That's why some longtime viewers are now saying the WNBA feels different compared to even a year ago. Not because the basketball changed, because the atmosphere around it changed. The internet transformed the league into a nonstop emotional battlefield where every game now carries hidden tension underneath it. Every matchup feels tied to larger debates about popularity, media influence, favoritism, race, visibility, and the future direction of women's basketball itself. And that pressure keeps building after every viral moment. Because no matter which side fans are on, almost everyone agrees on one thing now. The conversation around the WNBA has become bigger than the sport itself. And once that happens, controlling the narrative becomes almost impossible. Because the audience takes over. Fans create their own interpretations, their own heroes, their own villains, their own truths about what they believe is really happening behind the scenes. And those competing realities are now colliding harder after every game night. That's why this entire situation feels so unstable right now. The league is growing faster than ever publicly, while privately, the fan base is becoming more divided, suspicious, and emotionally charged than ever before. And if that tension keeps escalating the way it is right now, then eventually the biggest threat to the WNBA may not come from outside criticism at all. It may come from the audience no longer believing the narrative being sold to them anymore.